Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
And welcome back, everybody. I'm going to talk with a gentleman today that we have made our man of the year because he's got so much insight into things that affect all of us. And we don't realize how it is affecting us. And these are things that have been decided probably years ago, but you deal with them every day. And I'm talking about urban planning, how a town, a city, a village comes together with all of the infrastructure, the traffic, the parking, the building, sewer systems and all. He is the retired urban and regional planner, University of Pittsburgh, and he's back with us. Richard Golden Bickel Jr. is on the program. Hey, Richard, how you doing?
Okay, very good, Steve.
It's great to have you back here. I want to get your feedback on something that is trending literally this morning, and this is a graduate student, and he did a thesis, and it actually got some attention. Obviously, he's studying urban planning, and essentially, he's calling it a blueprint for a sustainable future. And I'm not going to read the whole thing. There's no reason to, but his focus is New York City climate policy. He feels that that needs to be taken into consideration, sustainability, when it comes to climate change and all of that. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I happened to see that article in the Times today because I always look through it for interesting articles about New York City and the region. Mm-hmm. And I think he's on the right track. And if he can get support from local decision makers at different levels, that would be a real accomplishment.
He says the moment he knew this field was for him, he was working with the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, and he lived in Guam for a while and just did a lot of climate research. And then that brought him to this decision to focus his thesis on the climate situation. You know, what we got going on, and his focus is in New York City, not just New York City, but just overall. Is that, for you a concern, the climate change situation?
The media covers it in different ways, and a lot of stories conflict. But the bottom line is there's something going on, and we've got to deal with it. And it affects everyone from federal and state officials, but down to the neighborhood level. And it's important that people be aware of it at least, and that way they can be more informed when policies are being established. So
this gentleman, his name is Derek, he talks about the moment he knew that the field was right for him, and that's where he spent the summer looking at climate change. For you, Richard, when did you know? What was that moment that you knew that urban planning was the right thing for you?
Well, having started in pre-med and not doing too well in chemistry, I decided I need a new orientation. So I took an urban geography course as a junior in college and really enjoyed the course. And it was taught by a professor in the planning school where I stayed to get my master's degree. So I guess the decision to go into planning as a career started after that course in the second term of my junior year, and had to reorient my whole approach, but it worked out well.
Wow! So that was that bit you, that moment. I mean, we've talked about your medical career, or the view of it, but that was the moment that you realized that urban planning is right for you. Interesting. Huh.
Yeah, I think if a student has interest in planning and takes courses in school, not necessarily at the graduate level initially, and also does some reading about planning concepts, and they'll have enough information to consider applying for a planning program, either an undergraduate program or a master's degree program.
So I want to pivot over now to a couple of stories. One of them is trending. This originates in Milwaukee, but I think it pertains to all areas. The presence or absence of sidewalks in different areas. And apparently in Milwaukee, it's a point of contention among a lot of communities, whether they should be there, whether they should not be there. Overall, we just picking, Milwaukee, but it could be anywhere. What are your thoughts on sidewalks?
Well, sidewalks are very important if you're in a very dense urban area and there's a lot of traffic. You want a place of safety that's separated from the traffic flow and that has access to the land uses that are next to the highway. And so I view that very favorably. I think I saw that article again in the Times, and it was pretty interesting. And I think the area that they were talking about, it sounded like it was they had no sidewalks, and now they wanted to add sidewalks, and that created a NIMBY reaction. Not in my backyard.
Right. And I get it in a way because the sidewalks would go in potentially taking up some of your lawn, but technically, and I don't know the exact view of this, but in a community, there's a percentage of space that belongs to the town. I used to hear it was like 2 or 3 feet off the road.
Right. Yeah, and that's the area that might be quote unquote taken if there has to be a road widening project,
right,
or other things that occur. And at the same time, you've got to, in this case, you probably have to evaluate the traffic impact and the pedestrian safety, and also the change in character to the community, because even though it may be a welcome amenity in many communities, it might be viewed as negative because this sounds like a very bucolic, low-density area that views the sidewalks as a threat.
Well, it's a great point you bring up, because some in this area are seeing the sidewalks as too urban for a rural community. So if you have a community, a lot of older homes, and now there's concrete, call it the concrete jungle, really not, but that's what people are viewing it like, oh, wait a minute. So yeah, like you said, not my backyard.
Right.
What for you would you say when planning a community are the 2 top things that stand out for you? Is it the flow of traffic? Is it, things that we don't even think about, sewage? What are the 2 most important things?
Well, I think the most important is the community character, and that relates to the land use pattern and the density of development. And then the other is transportation. How do you get around? Is the transportation system supporting a more walkable community, or is it supporting high-speed traffic that is where the community is sort of the back door instead of the front door?
So when we're looking at that, are we talking about the vibe, the culture, the feeling of the community kind of dictates where we go?
Well, community character has a lot to do with how the community is perceived and the land use pattern they want to promote, not only now, but in the future. And there are many places that have transformed from low-density areas to higher density and a lot of commercial uses, and that dramatically changes the character of the community and also the needs for the future.
I don't know how often this exists in other areas around the country, but I do know where I am on Long Island. We have a number of landfills where it is just a huge, call it a mountain of garbage. It's camouflage. There's dirt on top of it. There's some kind of green covering. It looks like, I don't know if it's grass or if it's a covering that looks like grass. What are your thoughts on landfills? I don't know if that's ever come up in some of the planning you've done.
Well, landfills are often talked about, and if you come into New York, you see a huge, from the south, on Amtrak, you see a huge landfill that's now filled and has vent stacks coming out of it to control the gases that are there. And that's an extreme, though. Some landfills are very small, and it depends on the character of the community, and also the fact that landfills are not necessarily viewed as a good neighbor, right. And so they're often put in areas where houses are not going to be located.
What is the alternative to a landfill? Carting the garbage off somewhere?
That could be a solution, but that's a very expensive solution, and also produces a lot of truck traffic, and that's not desirable either. But again, it's often in an industrial area where that is not as negative an impact as it would be if it was right in a neighborhood of some kind.
So I want to share a email that we got, and this came from John in Ludlow, Massachusetts, based on the last time we got together. And he says, I'm glad I found your talk. I'm looking at a career path and am wondering the difference between a civil engineer and an urban planner. Can you tell me?
Well, a civil engineer builds things and makes things. Planners deal with a lot of ideas, and they try to build communities by preparing long-range plans, looking at population and employment numbers, and trying to match the needs of the community with the desires of the residents and the local officials to create what would be called a comprehensive plan or a vision for the next 20 years. And this can be done at the local level and the regional level, and it often results in debates about what kinds of projects to include in the plan and what the impacts might be.
Did you ever have an interest in civil engineering?
No, I don't think so. I got burned trying to do chemistry. I think I would have had more problems with some of the engineering details that you have to learn.
Well, and I don't even know what's involved in that, so I'm jumping in here blind. But is there different education or deeper education involved with civil engineering?
Well, I would say it's definitely a different path. Architecture is another career that's associated with planning, landscape architecture and design. There are a lot of other fields that relate to planning and vice versa, and all of those can end up being a career path, but you've got to get the fundamentals of planning down and understanding of the need for public meetings and listening to the people and to the local officials, not just coming out with a plan and saying, this is it, you've got to adopt it.
What attracts you most about urban planning?
The ability to look at all sides of the community and all the examples you gave today, that there's no one solution. It's got to be compatible with what's going on and what the future looks like for that community, and ideally incorporating the wishes of the people as well as their local officials.
Do you find that it's a delicate balance between what you feel is needed in a community and needs to get done versus the homeowners or the residents versus politicians? Do you often feel that you're kind of in the middle of all of it?
You wish you could be in the middle. Sometimes you're at the end. I would say a planner has to go in with the understanding that they may have a great plan, but it's got to be sold, so to speak, to the community and to their elected officials, or it won't go anywhere. And the goal of most plans is to get them adopted. And if the adoption implies that these decision makers have accepted what's in the plan, and of course they can make amendments, but they've got to start with a document that's based on the needs of the community and its future forecasts.
What would you say to somebody like John that reached out in terms of getting a better feeling for what the career path may be? What should you look at? What should you study? Now, maybe there's an internship available so you could really get a better feel for it.
Yeah, I think the American Planning Association has lots of information, and some of it is oriented to students who are in the field and trying to get a planning degree. And so that's one area. Also to read books about planning, and the famous Power Broker book about Robert Moses is eye-opening because it talks about how he was able to accomplish things, not necessarily as a planner, but as an implementer, because he had political support, he had support of the MTA board, and he pushed through a lot of good things, but also some what today would be viewed as bad things, like putting expressways through Greenwich Village and things like that. And so that will give you, it's a 1,000-page book with footnotes. It's about 800 pages, and it was a Pulitzer Prize winning book by Robert Caro, and it's a real education on how somebody can influence decisions and get their way pretty dramatically.
Do you feel that he got it done because he was always making connections, always connected to people, always trying to kind of working things, and that worked in his favor? Yes,
that probably did. I didn't know anything about Robert Moses until I got into planning school. I just hadn't heard about him, but it's amazing what he accomplished, and all those parkways coming out of Queens and Brooklyn out into the parts of Nassau County and eventually Suffolk County. They're a credit to him, but unfortunately he didn't like buses and he didn't like trucks, and he designed the bridges so that those buses wouldn't be able to fit underneath them.
Well, what's very I find interesting is that I live in that area, and I didn't know all the things that you're mentioning in terms of Robert Moses. I had no idea. I learned it all from you, and I live here.
Well, it's a lesson to learn about how someone can have so much influence, but if he didn't have support from the MTA board and the governor, etc., it wouldn't have happened.
Right.
So he had a great idea, but he had to get it sold, and he had to get political support.
That's a great word you just used, get it sold. And that sounds like, those who have the idea, maybe the support of constituents, somebody's got to buy it. So whether it's a politician, whether it is the community, whatever it might be, you have to sell it. But it's also, I believe, that you need to believe in it.
Right.
Was that your feeling, when you were working on projects?
Yeah. If you're preparing a local study or a township plan or a transportation project, you've got to believe in what you're doing, or you're just not going to be able to present it in a way that gains support.
What would you say at this time, 2025, and somebody's thinking about a career in urban planning? Maybe it's John. Maybe he's also looking at civil engineering. What would your best advice today, especially at this, and it could change in 5 minutes, with the way that life is. And I don't do politics. I'm just saying there's a lot of change going on. What are your thoughts in terms of that career direction?
I think planning is invaluable for a community. And when I started out in Montgomery County, Pennsylvania, we had a local planning program, and I spent a lot of time going to night meetings with local officials and planning commission members. And it was a real education, sort of a postgraduate education, to learn how things really get done at the local level.
Yeah.
And also the infamous NIMBY reactions that sometimes make the local officials take a direction that doesn't necessarily support what the planner wanted to accomplish.
We've talked before about NIMBY, not in my backyard, a number of times. In your early on in your career, did you find that was big, and were you surprised in terms of how much opposition there is out there, even though in your heart you're thinking this is actually a good idea for your community, but people say no, I don't want it here?
Yeah, I think that's something that planners need to learn when they start out. That learn from the professionals who are in the office, but also learn by trying to go to meetings or being assigned to go to meetings and seeing how people react to ideas of apartments near single-family homes, affordable housing, which is one of the primary NIMBY concepts, and even transit, or now this story about sidewalks. That came out of left field, but it's very important depending on the character of the community.
And as we can see here, and I understand their argument there in Milwaukee. I can see, if you have an old community and these lawns and these big trees and these old, 100-plus-year-old houses, and then somebody comes in and says, yeah, we're going to put sidewalks in. It's going to change the look. I understand that. But there might be reason for that they need that. Wonderful talking with you. Every time we get together, it's just, Richard, it's refreshing. You have your finger on the pulse of things. It also shows me I have to read the New York Times more often, because you get it all in one place and I'm all over the place trying to find information.
Yeah, we talk about congestion pricing, but that's probably good.
Yeah, well, we have in the past, and that seems to be a very moving target.
Right.
For sure. Thanks so much for being here. Be well, and we'll catch up soon.
All right. Thanks, Steve.
Thank you.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house.
And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned.
This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.